We managed to get our hands on what could be the most valuable information about Tanki Classic as of yet. So Tanki Online Classic is a game that will have 15 of these features that I'm about to tell you right now, and we've ranked them in a certain list, starting off from the one that I don't like all the way to the feature that I like the most. And we're gonna start off really shortly, but before that, the sources to this information are in the description below. In last place, we have the concept of having no augments or alterations in the game. Now, this is a really big problem, and this is also a really hot take. So first of all, hear me out for a second. I do understand that old Tanky Online is supposed to be like, well, it's supposed to be like old Tanky Online, and so it kind of severes the authenticity of the game. If you call it Tanky Classic, then it shouldn't be something that has augments and alterations from new Tanky, which does make sense. But the thing is, the reason why I wanted alterations to be part of this game is because of two main reasons: longevity and replayability. Now, these terms come from the fact that, let's say, for example, you get your account maxed out, right? And once you're done with that, then there's no incentive for you to play further. You can't try out new combos because you've had all the maxed out combos, and you can't really basically do a lot considering that you have just like 12 to 13 turrets in the garage and 8 to 9 hulls in the garage. So, what you need to do in that moment is that you need incentives to play, right? Either that incentive could be an event, or it could be a different way of playing the game, and that different way of playing the game is what we call an alteration. And by the way, I'm not referring to the augments that we see in Tanky Online today that completely destroy the game balance. I'm referring to the alterations that existed in the game about 3 to 4 years ago, which were partially balanced, or well, they were balanced for the most part, and basically they were just a way to alter the way your turret works. Especially, like, let's say for example, the high capacity ammo clip, which is a alteration of hammer. So what happens is that instead of having 3 clips, you have 5 clips. That's all. And your magazine takes a little longer to load. That's all. That's literally it. So you just change the way your hammer works, and instead of a 3 shot hammer or like a gun, basically what you have is a pump shotgun, which is basically the term used for such shotguns. So I'm not getting a particularly huge advantage, and as a matter of fact, I'm getting no advantage. I'm just changing the way my turret works. So the thing is that these alterations give you a lot of different options, and those options can be new ways for you to try out within the game. So in a game which has 13 turrets and, for example, 10 hulls, then under usual circumstances, you can do the math. I'm not going to do the math, but you're going to have about 110 or something combos. And when you play on those particular combos, then what happens is that you only have a limited option on what you're going to do, right? You can, like, you can play with the Wasp hammer combo one day, and you can play Smoky Titan another day, and so on and so forth. But those are limited options. But with alterations, let's say if every turret and every hull is 3 different alterations, then at that point you have like about 300 options. And again, I'm not doing any math, this is just numbers from the top of my head. So please don't tell me in the comments that, like, how does whatever equal to whatever you just said. So yeah, this is just an example, and that is why I feel like augments should have been added into the game. Or well, to be more precise, I feel like alterations should have been added to the game. But even if they're not, then that's completely fine. It's Tanky Classic, I can't complain. And let's move on to the next one, which is Generalissimo is the highest rank. First of all, the biggest problem is that I probably did not pronounce that word right, but it's Tanky Classic, and the highest rank could be Generalissimo because that's what it used to be in old Tanky Online, and I can't complain about that. But once again, when we talk about incentives, once you're Generalissimo, what are you gonna do? Like, you're just gonna be Generalissimo. And one of the reasons why you play the game is to be on a higher rank than other people, and hence be a more quote unquote capable tanker, right? So Generalissimo is just Generalissimo. If it was Legend instead, then could have been better. Like, for example, you could understand the difference between Legend 1 and Legend 100, right? So there would have been a difference, and that difference would have showed, for example, a disparity in skill, whether one person is a legend and the other is a very experienced legend. So that is something that could have been really nice, but I can't complain. Once again, it's old Tanky Online, there's not much to complain about. So moving on, in number 13 we have the concept of esports. So at this point, we're at the point of the list where I don't really hate these things. I'm just like, I'm not really concerned with them all that much because I'm not really a esports kind of a guy. So esports will be a thing in old Tanki Online or Tanki Classic, which is a pretty good thing. But personally, it's not something that concerns me. So that's the reason why it's so low in the list. Let's move on to number 12, which is that the Tanki Online vlog and the Tanki Classic vlog is going to be the same. So, I mean, I don't really have a problem with this, but at the same time, I'm not really happy with this. I don't mean to say that it's something bad, but at the same time, it's not something particularly really nice. It's just, it just exists. It's a fact that, yeah, we are going to cover both the different informations of different games in one vlog. I don't hate it, I don't love it, it's okay. So that's why it's on this spot. And now, number 11 is the monetization of the new Tanky, or well, the old Tanky is going to be different. Now, the thing is that this is a very dangerous statement. All right. So, what I have come across is the fact that this Tanky Classic is going to be monetized in a way that is different from the Tanky Online that we see today. And the reason why it is in kind of the middle of the list is because this statement could either be really good or really bad. Because if it's different, then it could be different in a way that, for example, the monetization is more user friendly. Like someone that buys in the game does have an advantage. For example, they can buy additional cosmetics, or they can buy buyer exclusive paints, or they could potentially even have certain upgrades that non-buyers cannot have or need to grind for. And it's just enough to give an advantage to the person that's buying, but not all the way to the point where everyone else that's not buying is crushed. So that's good. But on the contrary, this could very well be even worse than what we know today. So, for example, they basically give you M3 kits in the garage for about, like $100 maybe. And then the next thing you know is that there's a corporal with a maxed out tank blowing everyone up into smithereens. So, yeah, that's not something that we would want. And that is why, because there's not a lot to say about this particular piece of information, whether it's good or bad, I've just put it in the middle of the pack. So that's that. And now let's move on to the next one. So number 10 is basically the idea that main accounts cannot be transferred, which basically means that you can't, like transfer all your information or all your data or basically all your garage from Tanki Online to Tanki Classic, which does make sense. And this is the way it should happen. It's not particularly good, particularly bad. It's just something that is there, something that we anticipated. And logically, if you look at the situation, then it does make sense to not allow anything of this sort to happen. Because let's say that you were able to transfer your data from Tanki Online to Tanki Classic, then what? Like if I transfer my, I think, Legend 11 account from one game to another, then why do I have any reason to play that game? I'm literally maxed out. So that's like saying that, oh, I'll take a copy of that particular game, but on the condition that the game is completely 100% complete. There's no point. The whole point of Tanky Online, if you don't consider the multiplayer factor in, then like basically what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to reach the highest rank and get the highest gear and everything. So on that note, it's a good thing that they're not allowing one account to be transferred into another, and so on and so forth. The next one is the Battle Pass system, which will have a free version and a paid version. Once again, this could be good, this could be bad. We can have another discussion on this in a separate video, how the Battle Pass should work, how it could work, and how it should not work. But it's basically once again just a piece of information. I wouldn't consider it to be good or bad. It should just stay there. And that's all. But you know what, I'll just add on something here, which is that it would be really nice if, for example, the final reward of your battle pass is some sort of skin that just came out, as in that game it came out. And it could be like, for example, for every battle pass that you complete, you get this particular item or a particular key, and when you collect, for example, 5 of those keys, then you can use those to get a particular skin. So that's something that's like that could be fun, and you would have a lot of incentive to play the game again and again and again, because you need to grind and get that skin and all of that stuff. Now number 8 is that there are no updates unless the players demand an update. This is a good thing because we won't have any unnecessary updates, and as you all know, unnecessary updates and unwanted updates are the reason why Tanki Online is at this stage right now. It's literally on a ventilator. But at the same time, the fact that we won't have any updates because the players are not demanding them is kind of concerning. Because you can't basically call everything off and say, if you say so, then sure we can get that update, but if you don't say so, then alright, let's let the game be as it is. I mean, imagine the fact that let's say next year Tangy Classic does release and no one demands an update. 10 years later, 2035, we're literally going to be having the exact same game. So what I'm saying is that Tanky should have updates every now and then. It could be a new map once every 6 months. It could be, it could be a lot of different stuff that does not ruin the game, but simultaneously does not equal to having no updates at all. So there should be a balance. The second problem is that Tanki Online or Tanki Classic is a game that appeals to younger audiences. I mean, me personally, and you, and maybe a lot of the other people that you know. The reason why they played this game and the reason why they do play this game is because at one point they, as a child, found it appealing. They saw it on Flash and they were like, yeah, this is a really good game and I'll play it and I'll grind on it for hours and so on and so forth. So initially Tanky Classic is going to have a majority of OG players, right? Because we are the ones that demanded this game to release. We are the ones that want an OG version of Tanky Online. But the problem arises when, let's say, the game does get a certain promotion, and let's say, for example, if the game has 1 million players, 90% of those players are new players and 10% of the players are OG players. So the new players are the majority. If Tanky asks the community that, for example, look, this is an update. Do you want this update or do you not want this update? Then there is going to be a very big problem. There are 10% of people that understand what is good and what is bad, but the 90% of the players in that game, the majority, are the ones that aren't particularly sure. If they ask, for example, the new players, which are a younger age group, that look, this is a flying tank. Do you want that in the game? Most of them could say yes, and we have the concept of flying hulls all over again. So, this could be a problem, but I'm not saying it is going to be a problem, and that is exactly why I put this thing in the middle of the list once again. I don't think it's good, I don't think it's bad, it's just there in the middle. So let's move on to the next one, which is the availability of the tutorial. Now, at this point in the list, we're moving on to the stuff that I like. And the tutorial is something that a lot of people are nostalgic with. They like the tutorial. They used to love the tutorial, how, like you had basically an entire map just for the sake of learning how to control your tank. You come out of the garage and all of that is just a really fun and enjoyable experience for someone that's trying Tanky Online for the first time. Or even if they're not trying it for the first time, they're just reliving those old memories. So it's a really great experience. And I personally like the fact that they've added it back. And now number 6, now we're actually moving on to the stuff that I really like, which is the similar old physics. So this isn't something that's assured, but they're trying to recreate the Flash physics in HTML5, and this will be really good because, HTML5 physics is just, I mean, what can I say? You guys know, I know, let's not dive into that. And yeah, that's about all there is to talk about this. So let's move on to the next one, which is the OG Tanky interface, or the website basically. And this is something that I really personally like for two reasons. The first reason is that obviously the nostalgic part and how old Tanky Online is better, and I like the old interface, I like Flash interface, I like all of the old stuff, I don't like the new stuff. That is one reason. The other reason is that I personally aesthetically like the older version better. And like, for example, the new Tanky Online logo, the new Tanky Online loading screen, the new Tanky Online profile on YouTube even. I don't like those. I like the old one. And this is something that is subjective to opinion. So you can like it, you cannot like it, it's completely up to you. But personally, I don't find the new logos and everything aesthetically pleasing, especially not as compared to the old ones. So yeah, that's the point, and there's not much to talk about this one either, except the fact that in the old interface on the website, you can see the number of players that are online. Now number 4, which is that there will be no matchmaking, only pro battles. Now, I don't really feel the need to actually explain why this is a good thing. Because if this is a video that is being watched by someone that's played old Tanky Online, then you know exactly why it's a good thing. But for those who require an explanation, the fact is that people love to create battles and play those battles in their own settings, in their own maps, in their own like battle of choice, rather than just clicking the word play and then being put in a random battle with random people. Like there's a lot of reasons pro battles, I believe personally, is more superior to the matchmaking system. Obviously, matchmaking has its perks. I wouldn't say it's completely bad, but personally, pro battles all the way. And yeah, that's the reason. So there's not much to talk about this one either, considering the fact that most of you guys already understand the implication here, how pro battles are, like basically how old Tanky worked. So it does make sense for them to be put into the game rather than matchmaking. So that's that. And now let's go on to number 3. Now this is the fact that no hovering hulls will be part of the game. I mean, it's pretty obvious that because it's Tanky Classic, there aren't going to be any flying tanks or whatnot. But particularly the reason why I'm pointing this out is because it's such a relief. It is such a relief, I cannot even tell you. Because, first of all, man, since when do tanks fly? Tanks don't fly. Tanks are not, like they are tanks. That's all there is to say. You can't expect a tank to jump. You can't expect a tank to float. You can't expect a tank to strafe or whatever that's called. Bro, tanks are tanks. They are on the ground. They use those tracks that they have on the bottom of the tank to move, and they kaboom. That's all they're supposed to do. Yeah, I kind of got a little carried away there. I'm sorry for that. But the point of this whole rant was that tanks realistically, practically, applicably cannot fly or float or hover. So, fortunately, none of those things are going to exist in Tanky Classic, and therefore the game will actually look like applicable and realistic. Obviously, it's far from looking actually realistic like an actual battlefield or whatnot, but at least you don't have tanks that fly. So I'm really pleased with that. And let's move on to the next one, which is that the new turrets are not going to be part of the game. Everything from Magnum and onwards is not going to be part of the game. Now, two reasons why this is so high up on the list. First, the lack of balance and the fact that these turrets have the potential to completely ruin the maps that the games have. Now understand that one of the main reasons Tanky Classic, or well I should say the old Tanky Online, was so fun was because there were maps and those maps required a lot of strategy to play through. For example, in Noise, you need to tactically go up to the red team if you're the blue team, and you need to, like if you're playing Capture the Flag, then you need to tactically somehow use some of your teammates to defend yourself, and then just sneak from a certain path and just get their flag and jump back to your base. On the contrary, if you're on the red team, you basically need to jump straight into the blue team's area, take the flag and run. So you have these hit and run tactics, and there's all sorts of strategies that you can use, and you can like basically don't use any strategy at all. You can just jump and try to get a flag again and again and again. But in the new Tanky Online, there are a bunch of hulls and in particular turrets that really disrupt this mechanism and this natural way of playing the game. For example, Magnum completely ruined Noise, right? And if that wasn't enough, Tesla ruined it further. So you just like launch 3 to 4 orb balls, or I don't know what they're called. They're just those electricity thingies, right? So you launch those and they're just floating around the map, and you keep pressing space. Everyone gets electrocuted and you get kills and you get points. That's all. Where's the fun in that? Don't get me wrong. If you're the guy with the Tesla, then you're having a lot of fun. But what's the point if you go into the game, kill a bunch of tanks by pressing one key repeatedly and then logging out? You're practically doing labor at that point, considering how boring it is that you're just pressing one key over and over again. You should be paid to do something like that, and yet people somehow tend to find that fun. Anyways, point being that the whole reason why old Tanky was so fun, and even now, whenever I find a really good game in Tanky Online, even in matchmaking, the reason the game is good is because it's competitive. If it's rugby, we're like going head on 5 points for each team. If it's Capture the Flag, it's 1 flag, something like that, right? So when it's competitive, it's fun. But when you're just spamming the other team, then there's no fun. You're just farming kills. And when you're only farming kills, it's not fun because there's no challenge. The reason why you play a video game is because you have a challenge and you need to overcome that challenge. So now this Magnum thing and the Tesla thing was just an example. These new turrets are basically one of the new features of new Tanky Online, which have made life harder for everyone, but they will not be in old Tanky Online, and I can't be grateful enough. And now it's time for the number one feature. Now, this is something that might come off as a surprise to a lot of you because it's not even something that's directly related to the gameplay, and this is the existence of a mobile version. Now, hear me out for a second. On hindsight, or well, in foresight, this isn't something that you would think is something that's worthy of the first spot in this list, but the implications are massive. And when I say massive, I mean understand the fact that the reason we have an old Tanki Online right now is because of two main points. The first one is that because Pro Tanki and R Tanks and G Tanks and all the fake copies of Tanki Online were basically earning the money that Tanki Online themselves could have earned by introducing an old version of Tanki Online. That's one reason. The other reason is that we personally always have demanded old Tanki Online and therefore we're getting it, right? But here's the thing. A lot of us want to relive the nostalgia. A lot of us just want to play the old game. But understand that we aren't always going to play Tanky Online. Like, even if I start playing Tanky Classic the day it releases, I'll probably constantly play it for 6 to 7 years. Maybe that's even a stretch, maybe not even that long. And then I'll go on a hiatus. And maybe 20 years later, when I'm like, I don't know, in my 40s, maybe I'll log into that account again. No one knows. But the thing is that we need a new community. And that new community, wherever it's gonna come from, it's going to come from somewhere that a lot of people can access the game. And that is a mobile version. And the reason why I believe Tanky Online is not getting a lot of players from the current mobile version is because it's very complicated. Tanky Online in itself is a very complicated game, and most people just look at the interface for one part and then they're like, nah, man, I'm not doing this. I'm not gonna play this game because there's so much stuff that I don't understand. So, in a classic version of the game, which was primarily so successful because it was so easy to understand, login, arrow keys, spacebar, kaboom. That's all you had to do. And that exact thing, put that into a mobile phone, and every single person that comes across that game, I assure you, at least they're going to be interested in it at some point. So, this will be really, really important in building the community, and therefore, I believe that it deserves the number one spot. So, that was my list. If you agree with what I said and if you enjoyed the video in general, then like it. If you don't like anything that I said, or if you would like to disagree or debate upon something, that is also an option that you have. You can do that in the comments. Let me know what you think in the comments as well. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, which I will be making, then you should subscribe because that is how you'll stay updated. So yeah, that's that, and I'll see you in the next one.